we're really going to kind of dive into discussing the latest strategies and development for how to improve and enhance the customer experience and operation by using that AI in complaint management to really prioritize those customer-centric strategies and really deepen that relationship. And Kim went into a wonderful presentation for us, so thank you, Kim, for doing that. To really, before we jump into that very first question, I do want to give our panelists a chance to give them a brief introduction of themselves. So again, I could go into a laundry list of achievements, but who better to talk about themselves than themselves? So what we are going to actually do is we're going to start with Robbi, joined by Brian, and then Kim to follow up. But just a quick 1-minute introduction about yourself so that we know where you're coming from. I appreciate the titles, but always good to hear what you're great at.
Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Robbi Armstrong. I work at Key Bank. I have been there for approximately 11 years, and I am responsible for our external conversational AI. I work with a whole team of both conversational designers, engineers, etc., bringing conversational AI to life for our contact center.
Thank you so much, Robbi. Brian?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Brian Saylor, Sandy Bank. I've been with this institution for 20 years. I'm in the banking industry for over 30, so please don't judge my age based on that number. I'm the director of the contact center, and we have about 80 agents, receive 240,000 calls annually. But my specific role is to develop our call center to a revenue center, and leveraging some of this software and AI is important. Since the onslaught of COVID, we have found that clients prefer to be empowered and prefer to do their banking outside of going into a traditional branch, which is where I was from before. So very excited and honored to be a part of this panel today. Thanks, Amber.
Thank you, Brian. And Kim, one more time, spotlight on you.
Happy to share. So Kim West, Director of Product Marketing at Uniphore. And what's cool about that is really straddling the idea of what's happening in the market itself. So working with our customers across geographies, I get to sit in, see how they actually are using AI. What does that mean for their agents? What's their agents feel about it? And then also seeing how the customers are interacting with self-serve. So really, I'm happy to be here. Really cool to get the conversation started.
Wonderful. Thank you all for doing that. I truly appreciate it. So we're going to get started really into the meat of the presentation here, friends, and that content. So our first question to really start the panel off is truly, what is the impact of ROI on adopting conversational AI, not only for improving agent handle times and preventing fraud, but more so on incorporating the human side behind that digitization? And let's start with Robbi.
Okay, thank you. So the human side is an interesting, when we embarked on conversational AI I also work in the contact center, and it is that element of, are you trying to replace our jobs? So you've got to speak to that. And that is a journey with your contact center agent. So you even talk about reducing AHT. If I take easy calls out of the contact center, if I'm looking at those low-hanging fruit, which is what we look at first, right? We look at account and routing number. That's a self-serve, right? So you look at all of those low-hanging fruits, you might actually be increasing AHT because the agents are getting those more complex issues that they need to handle and research. And that's really what you want them to do. You do want to take those easy self-serve. So the other thing that was important for us is we have a human behind the conversational AI. So we offer the chat in our mobile app. We offer it in a lot of spaces, but there is always that, I see this isn't going well. I can't help you. Let me get you to someone that can. And so we put our contact center agents behind that experience. And then you spoke really nicely, Kim, to that on your journey map, the humanization effort. But it is a warm transfer too. So we're telling that agent in that transfer, here's what their issue was, here's what they were doing with the AI that could not help them. So they're not having to repeat that. All of that was important, but it is a roadshow, I think, and a discussion point that you have to have with your stakeholders around what you're trying to do is not eliminate contact center agents. It's not to eliminate branch interactions. It really is to augment the service that you're providing to your clients in their channel of choice. That's been a real focus from a key bank perspective.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robbi. That's such a great thought. It's not removing that agent. That agent is critical in making the difference. And really, as Kim had brought up earlier, making that exceptional, what gives that effort and that ease. So thank you for that. Brian, what do you have to say on that as well?
Yeah, it's a great conversation. So in our journey, we're a 155-year-old bank. So, people used to call the client service center because they had a problem. They don't usually call just to say hi. And what we have found is that first minute is challenging for our employees. It is, thanks for being with us for 30 years, but I'd like to ask you 50 questions about who you are before I give you any answers. So that first 1 minute is very difficult. So what we've really been talking about, first, I want to touch base on the conversational AI and what it does for our employees. It's made them go from a complaint department to a consultative department. They're empowered. They're able to do things in a creative way. And Robbi, you brought up a great point that on average, you'd see the average handling time reduced by 1 minute, which would make it logical for your CFOs to say, well, we don't need as many people. But it's not necessarily about that. It's about what are you doing with the time that's now free? So are you addressing the client complaints? Are you looking proactively to their future versus, is there anything else I can help you with? And you hope the client says, oh yeah, I think I might need a car loan in 8 years. Can I talk about that now? It's just not a realistic approach. The other piece of the ROI that we have found with conversational AI is the empowerment of our employees that are hybrid. Employees that are hybrid in a call center are sitting at home. They may not know exactly how to address that complaint that we just heard, and it's intimidating and it's scary. So it allows them to not say, wow, let me deflect this, call a supervisor and call you back. It actually gives them the language immediately, which makes them feel comfortable and makes them feel better to address that client real time. I believe wholeheartedly that a positive employee experience leads to a positive client experience. So conversational AI not only allows me to empower my employees, but makes them feel that they're protected. They don't need to worry about this complaint management process, which we'll talk about later, and saying, well, it's a he said versus she said type of approach. It's all available to them. And what we have found is that it really helps them learn, grow, and become empowered. Now, I will say on the ROI side that with the humanization behind the digitization of this is that you do need analysts. You do need to provide capacity. So, before you run to your CFO and say, hey, we need this investment and I'll be able to cut my staff by 40%, think very carefully on how would you leverage what you already have and how can you reskill and retool your people to actually drive and grow revenue. And you can't grow revenue without retaining your clients. They're very hard to replace. So conversational AI has helped our employees retain those clients instead of them leaving and going to another financial institution.
Such a great answer, Brian. I really appreciate that. That truly focus on how that employee engagement is really actually what's going to help drive that ROI, excuse me, whether it's, for the organization, for them personally, and for that customer experience. I'm from a credit union. We call them members, friends. So sorry. Bringing back that language here, customers here. Kim, any thoughts on the follow-up for that to bring us in on this question one?
And I loved both answers because it captured some key things. One, music to my ears, Brian, saying, what we're now looking at the opportunity to drive revenue, immediate ROI. I think the piece that's really cool with AI and automation is the opportunity. And so the idea of now thinking through what are the other ways that we can sort of think through what happens in a contact center. It's not just to be responsive. How can we be proactive, whether it's calling out or reaching out to the customer ahead of time, or in that call itself, thinking through how do we upsell? How do we possibly add additional value? How do we plant the seed for a campaign that's coming later on? There's so many things you can pull out of that experience now. And I think we're only at the beginning point of thinking through, this is a high value interaction, regardless if it's self-serve or agent. What can we be doing in this space?
Wonderful. Thank you, Kim. I truly appreciate everyone on this one. It really is kind of that great way of how to make the human matter. And that's truly something that even through the pandemic and everything, that is truly what we should have learned through all of this. The human does matter. So on to our next question here, and this one's going to be directed starting with you, Kim, just to help you get this kind of the ball rolling here. But what are some of the challenges faced with legacy complaint management systems today?
One, that it probably doesn't exist. So that can be a challenge because the idea of, complaints and how do we manage through them, especially if it's a lot of the things. I'll step back for a moment. A lot of the times when it comes through the contact center, it's been around for so long, right? So that's why there's this great opportunity to then think through how to modernize it. But a lot of times it was, again, this piece of the necessary thing that we needed to have for a company to exist. We weren't looking at it through the lens of any type of opportunity to improve our brand, improve how we're perceived, improve operations. It just was, let's make sure it exists, customers call, and then we know somewhere there's some knock-on benefit of them being maybe a long-time customer because we've resolved a particular issue. So that's the reason why a lot of times it may not even exist. So then the issue is then if it does exist, are you just creating a tool or some sort of system that mimics what you already have? So there's usually the analogy of like, you know what, let's carve out the same cow trails where it's like, yes, the cow took this path because there was no technology before. Should we use technology to do the exact same thing? Or should we look through it and say, wait a minute, because we have this new tool, is there another way to tackle this problem? Should the system just be, let's capture it like a lot of companies are doing after the fact, let's code it, we tracked it, and then they kind of just put it on a shelf, the virtual shelf of like, whoop, we did what we needed to do, versus it being, what can we do to then say, what's the opportunity to learn? So the big thing with AI and what we're now sort of applying to the human experience is there's an opportunity to learn from every interaction. So what can we do from every particular interaction to get better? So one opportunity is how do we make the agent better? The human part is so valuable. And how do we make sure that if it's onboarding and we can now decrease the onboarding time, decrease that ramp up time because we've learned how to improve the complaint option because we've been listening into calls and thinking through how to standardize responses. That's an opportunity we haven't thought about. Another opportunity is then thinking through, well, even on the self-service channel, what's the opportunity to do something there? So it really is the idea of thinking through how do we make sure that we're listening to every call, we're learning from each call, and then we're taking action on what we've learned from those calls.
Thank you, Kim. That's such a very thorough. I love that thought. That truly, it's not just checking the box, right? Like it's not just, hey, either providing for policy regulation, all of that, just yay for compliance, I've got it done. It's how do we utilize it? It's such an underutilized factor to really make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Robbi and Brian, and I'm sorry, Kim, I interrupted you.
No, you did. No,
okay.
That was a great.
Just agree. Awesome. Robbi, Brian, any other thoughts on that question? You don't have to if you don't want to, but I figured I'd pass it off if you all have thoughts.
I would briefly add that there are so many mediums for clients to complain now. It used to just be a phone call, but they can Twitter, they can YouTube, they can social media it. And my daughter, who is 16, finds every way in the world to complain. It decreases trust. And it only takes, it used to be the story of you tell one person and they tell 10 people. Well, now you can tell millions in a couple of keystrokes. So it's an important platform for them to do. The other thing that I think is important about the complaint management system is Kim, you brought it up perfectly, is how do we take those learnings and improve the process? So we used to have those client focus sessions that marketing would run and tell us all the things that we did wrong in the last 5 years and we'll fix it. Well, now we should be able to analytically determine what are our client pain points? what's creating strife and how can we help them fix that? I'm a client of Amazon and a client of Apple, and I may be on my 15th software update, but I haven't lost trust in them because the 14th other one didn't work. And it's like, oh, bugs and defects. I actually think that they're trying to improve. So I've learned to trust them because they're listening to what we hear. And I know that in the customer service center, people always say, do you actually listen to what we say? And do you actually take it into consideration? And I think this AI is critical for us to archive that, have it, react, and show our clients that they help make those decisions for our future, which establishes deeper trust.
Absolutely, Brian, that you don't want that anonymous feedback to just end up in the void. It's, that's not the important piece. It is the words, and it reaches everyone. Robbi, last thoughts on this?
I would just echo exactly what you're saying. I mean, there's so many inputs to complaints, and making sure that you are monitoring that and following up on it, and that you have closed the loop because otherwise you're asking your clients for feedback and you're just letting it sit there. And I think that is worse. Don't ask them if you're not gonna take that data in and stitch together those client experiences. And then at a larger institution, ensure you're sharing them, right? There's only so many things I can impact in my corner of the world, but sharing that piece of the puzzle, because the client might go into the branch. How do I share all of that information that I might receive in the back end, being sitting in client, in the contact center? You do get a lot of that data, and how do you share that upstream, downstream, et cetera? So
absolutely. Thank you, Robbi, for polishing that with that. It truly is that collection. And how do we do this? Because at the point where the person is saying something, it really, truly is the problem. It's hit that breaking point where they need that assistance. And so it's up to us to really make that change. All right, so we're going to move on to our third question here, and we're going to start with Brian on this one. But Brian, in your perspective, how can that conversational AI and automation really positively impact complaint management systems? I know you went to it a little bit earlier, but let's start kind of with that agent and then go into that kind of customer's experience, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks. So first and foremost, when clients complain, our reps get scared. What did I do wrong? They're hesitant, they're reactive, and they go into fight or flight. So first and foremost, the complaint management and conversational AI provides consistency. It allows them to determine and know, I don't need to worry. Is this a complaint that I need to log? Is this something that's different? So that consistency is really critical, which allows for some training where we have information on that. Currently, many of my coaches have to listen to random calls, and that just doesn't have the impact. It's about a 2% call listening ratio, and now we can listen to 100% of the calls. Process improvement. If it's all automated, my team doesn't have to go to multiple phases waiting to get something done, which increases the wait time because they've got somebody waiting in a queue. Compliance purposes. We now have the transcription of what the client says. So I said this in the beginning, we don't want well, this is what I heard and this is what they said. We actually have what the true transcript is so that we're able to address it head on. The archiving of it is even more important because the client may call back a week later saying, what's going on with my complaint? And if they didn't get the same agent, the answer is, I have no idea. Which is not something that they want us to do. So having that archived conversation allows us to understand and become intelligent conversationalists versus, can you tell me what that was again? Basically requiring them to start all over. So on the agent experience, there's plenty of things. And of course, that coaching and allows our agents to be even better. Briefly on the customer piece of it, where, if they're filing a complaint, they, number one, are having it addressed in real time. And Kim, your demonstration was tremendous, where we provide them the language and the response time to recognize it versus, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. We'll get back to you in a month when we figure out what in the world just actually happened, because we know it's not always our department that created that. So it also helps them reduce the pain points. we de-escalated that call very quickly. And that client actually went from a detractor to someone that's going to give us positive NPS scores, because the true ability of a bank or the true ability of customer service is not when things are going well, but when clients have problems and challenges. That's when the true brand of your company comes through, and that's where your people really need to thrive. That's what builds trust. When things are going very easy, clients don't have a problem leaving. Also, the fact of a higher experience for our customers come through with the conversational AI, because we're able to address that. And listen, we may not be able to get everything done at one time, but if we do call back, we're able to address what happened. So we use the analogy that the right hand has to speak to the left hand, and we're able to ensure that we're not transcribing something wrong when we call the client and said, you had a problem with your debit card. And the client says, absolutely not. It was a issue with my credit card, but something happened in the language that was transacted. And our client feels that, okay, I have a better experience. The company is one. And for a growing institution like ourselves, trying to compete with other banks and announce today, Apple is now taking deposits. It's a scary thing for us to think through that process, where everyone wants to be in the banking industry. And what differentiates you is how well you do and how good your products are, but they're commoditized. So now conversational AI allows us to actually have a one-on-one relationship that is intimate, trustworthy, and long-lasting. That is what I believe is going to change the culture of our companies and the culture of our bank. Finally, we are very fortunate, being around for 155 years, that we have generational banking. But this conversational AI allows us to help those individuals that don't know us stay with us, because they're able to understand the technology we have, and they don't feel like, well, you're a great bank that serviced multiple generations, my grandparents, my great grandparents, but you're not as hip or you're not as up to speed with other banks. And I think it is going to be absolutely critical for banks to be on board with this. Otherwise, they may lose their needs to those Generation X and younger generations that rely on digital and self-service technology.
Such valuable insights, Brian. I really appreciate that. It truly is, how do we make that differentiation, especially in times, because all feedback matters. It doesn't matter. And it's truly what's going to drive what sets financial institutions apart. Robbi, why don't you finish up here on this for this question on this one? I'm going to take it second. I'm so sorry. But what do you really think on this one?
So I would just add on to that a little bit. You referenced a generational bank and where we're going from a self-service. So, when we looked at conversational AI, and I think we only have 3 minutes left, so I'll sort of maybe jump ahead a little bit. But, at Key, when we looked at conversational AI, we really took a crawl, walk, run approach. And I think you hit on this earlier, Kim, is you got to get your data, right? So where is your data? How do you, and our approach 100% was, what are our clients doing? What are they doing before they get online? What are they doing before they sign into their mobile? But most importantly, what are they doing when they get out of there? And we actually learned that 3 in 10 of our clients, so 90% of our clients are digitally active, and that that shouldn't surprise anybody after the pandemic, I would think. And we found that 3 in 10 of those clients called our contact center within an hour of being on our app or online. What are we not doing? How are we not self-servicing them? What is the issue? And so we really took that low-hanging fruit of, are there clients in there that are generational and maybe they can't maneuver? Maybe there's a helping them find the spots to do various things. So we really dug into that data and that client journey and looked at it. And that's where we built the AI. That's where we built the self-service. Now we're going a little bit backwards in terms of the agent assist, because we focused a little bit more on the self-service and getting our data together. And now we're going back in that whole agent assist, enabling the coach chatting. I mean, the power of it, I look at it as it's improving not only the NPS and improving the clients, I'm servicing them their channel of choice. They don't want to call the contact center in an hour. Now they're already upset, right? They were needed to do something, they can't do it. So now an agent's having to deal with somebody that's already irritated. So I'm helping the employees both. I'm helping the clients and the employees, but we are looping back because the power of helping them, providing what are the issues, how can we service up those procedures to the agents of those. I just it's powerful tools that help people's lives. For sure. And you got to look at the data, but getting the data is critical.
And you think at this point, I know where the mute button is, but thank you so much, Robbi. That was such great follow-up on that. Really good points. I truly just diving into it. And we do have until 12:10 for the panelists, so don't worry.
Okay. I'm so
You've got
sorry.
time.
For some reason, I thought it ended at my and I'm on a different time zone. So.
You're okay. Or yes, I'm 12:10 because I'm on Pacific here. So
Okay.
you're good. We'll just make sure so we get to cover all our questions.
Oh, good,
today.
good.
Kim, do you have any last minute thoughts on anything with that agents or customers experience you wanted to add to that before we go to our last question?
Just one thing. I love the answers. It's always, this is the best part, I think, for me in the job, and what I get to do is just seeing what's happening in real life and how are we adopting these different tools. The one thing I wanted to touch on is just the definition of self-service, because I think sometimes people think self-service has to be interacting with a chatbot or some sort of voice bot, etc. And I think it's Robbi that you brought me to this, because I loved your example of, well, you looked at your data, 3 out of 10 clients were calling in after being on the app. What I like about that is that's an opportunity where it was, okay, how can we now improve the self-service where they don't have to chat or anything? It's just how do we get them to have a better experience in the mobile app itself and not interact with anything, not even with a chat bot, etc. So I just love that piece of like, what's the opportunity for you to make sure the customer is having the best experience. And so in listening into those different complaints, but you might beyond complaints, looking at different consumer behavior. So what are the different things that they're doing also highlights opportunity for you to think through how to improve that journey as well.
Yeah, just one real quick thing I think it would be important is you have to be prepared to change the skill sets of your employees. They have to be familiar with the technology, and they have to be comfortable with that. And I'd also encourage any bank or any institution that's thinking about these types of solutions to engage your frontline employees. They are the best voice of reason, and they will be able to understand that while this system has this great data, if I'm overwhelmed by it, I can't even address the client's question. So empower those frontline employees to listen to demos, to feel comfortable. And it goes back to that first part of, they don't feel that they're being replaced. They'll feel that they're being empowered.
Such good pieces, friends. Thank you for putting all that together. It truly is. It's really still putting that human, again, just the huge theme of the day, friends, is putting that human into that interaction to truly find whether it's from that customer experience or from that agent's experience. So our final question, and we're going to start with Robbi first on this one. Sometimes when, you're on the phone and without that face-to-face interaction, customers can be a little bit more brazen, we'll say, and some of their kind of questions and comments. So I want you to kind of take about this from our contact center leaders' perspective. For organizations looking to increase customer NPS and CSAT metrics and drive that growth with AI and automation, what is a roadmap or efficiencies that a call center leader can implement when thinking about managing risk and preventing complaints?
So I would say, again, when we think about the technology that you can implement from a call center perspective, and you start to take a look at all of the inputs that you're taking. So now you've got, and I think this kind of goes back to Kim, you showing where you're looking at it up front, right? So you're taking a proactive approach to those phone calls. You're starting to identify within the AI, is this conversation going south? Do I need to get a coach on the line right away? And the power of all of the technology can really help drive that, knowing what that sentiment is. And I do think, even though going back up front, right? So now you've got to make sure that the clients you've identified up front, should this have been self-serve? Should this have been this? Where can we've got to go up and down the roadmap, right? So we've got to serve up here and make sure we're servicing that well. Then we can start to look at that roadmap and say, now I'm going to put AI in the listening. I'm going to see if a client's upset. I'm going to know if I need to escalate that call. And I think that the power of that, because we all know once they get in the end of an escalated call, if you've got an ECR complaint, now you've got all sorts of folks involved. What is the cost of that? What is the cost of, so anything you can do to move that up sooner in that, I think is going to be helpful. And then I think also, just from when I think about the roadmap that we have approached also, is when we've talked about predictive, I think that's been mentioned a couple of times, and proactive. So we've even mentioned that perhaps a little bit from a sales perspective, which it could be, right? It could be they're launching, they're coming in, and we see maybe they've recently changed their last name. Maybe they, are at that age, or we see something happen, a data point that we might think, oh, they've just bought a house, or we want to add a home equity, whatever those data points is. But I also think, from an AI perspective, there's this proactive of, your credit card is due tomorrow. Can I make that payment for you? And it's just a quick yes, right? I mean, all of those things just make their lives easier. And I think the younger generation comes in and says, look, my phone knows I just searched for a pair of shoes an hour ago. So what bank, why aren't you there? Why aren't you knowing those next best actions, right? And so I think there's all of the different powers. So the AI helps with the complaints, but move that upstream so you have the fewer complaints on the back end is really also an approach you need to think through. And I go back to the data, getting that data, understanding what you have, how you can stitch that client journey together, both from a physical perspective, if they're in the branch, from a contact center perspective, from a digital perspective, and where do they intersect? And how can you make that better? And then we also know, the more they deepen their relationship. So if they've got a checking account, how do I make sure they're using bill pay with me? How do I, we know they stay, right? Gets more difficult to unwind. So those are the ways that we're trying to approach AI, is really at every place we can in that client journey, and then layering it also into our teammates' journey. So you said you call your folks members. We at KeyBank, they're clients and teammates. So that's those are our vernacular.
Beautiful. Yes, it is. It's finding those moments that matters. And that's so important, truly, within that journey and that experience, because that's when it's going to set us apart. I mean, truthfully, whether we're a credit union, whether we're a bank, whether we're, that Apple with that, as Brian, you said, what is going to set us apart, and how do we make that experience to what keeps that retention for that customer? Goodness, it's just gonna keep coming out of my mouth, friends. But Brian, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you also have to have collaboration. You have to be able to sit down with your marketing department. You have to be able to sit down with your IT department. And then how do you work with detractors that become promoters? It may just be as simple as saying, please share our story. Please share your experience with us and get testimonials. So I love your crawl, walk, run approach. I actually add that sometimes we're on belly time for those that had kids that you don't even get to crawl yet. They're just swimming, thinking, it's a matter of considering what is it about and what do you try to do? Because my employees that work alongside of me, they went to the call center because they didn't want to sell. They think it's a bad word. And what we say is that you're servicing, you're not selling, you're offering a solution that may help them. And I think that setting the right mindset and talking for the right moment at the right time for the right reason is important. I love the next best product type of approach, but I really think AI provides us the opportunity to listen to what the client says instead of saying, well, they're lacking this product. Go ahead and sell them this product because 9 out of 10 want a debit card. Well, that's great, but if they don't really use it anymore, it's a waste of time and creates another complaint. So particularly in the complaint and CSAT metrics, I think that redefining revenue is what's helpful for people. It is not just how do you drive growth, it's keeping the clients happy, keeping them satisfied, and reducing your net loss through attrition, both on the employee side as well as on the client side. And then from there, you expand that relationship. So it takes new training, it takes collaboration with other divisions, and it takes a commitment to be willing to embrace and be humble enough to say, it's okay that you complain, because we want to hear what we can improve upon so that we don't have that challenge in the future. And that takes a different mindset. So sometimes we're on belly time. We're not even crawling yet.
You make a very great analogy there for us, Brian. It truly is. And it is about making that difference and where we have to start in that on moving forward. You know, is it in those baby steps? Is it just figuring out what is that solution? And, you know, we have thousands of outlets to find the information through Google searches, anything we want to figure out. I know what products I have, and I can look up what a home equity is if I don't know. But using our agents to really help drive that, to make that difference for that customer. Kim, any last thoughts on this? I know we're going to go over a couple minutes, but I feel like this is such really good meat here on this last questions. I don't want to leave you out.
No, and I love it. And Brian, I'm going to take that, just FYI, that you're on belly time. That's going to be like a new thing that I'll just throw out there because that was great.
I think it's really tummy time. So go ahead and take it however you want.
But the piece that I would add, because I look at this question when I think of roadmap, I think about where do you start? And the feedback that we get a lot of times is that it feels like too much, especially we have conversations about data and clean up your data and pull that all together. That's a whole journey on its own before you even get to the point of how do we leverage that data and apply it. So I think the biggest place in terms of where you start is similar to the idea of belly time. It really is start small and with what you're already doing. So if you're already analyzing data, start there. That's great. And then look at it and say, what are some sort of top caller intents where we could potentially see if we can change the dial a little bit? Or if you're not analyzing any data, but you know what, you already have some sort of feedback loop within the company. Maybe you're speaking to agents already, so you have some empirical data. It's wherever you can to think through what's the smallest use case that we could apply AI to and get some initial knowledge, because that data piece is going to be important. So where can you get some initial insight, some initial knowledge to test and iterate? That's the biggest thing. I think that's one of the reasons why I love this space, is that it encourages you to test, to fail, to figure stuff out, and then keep going. So wherever you're going to start, that would be what I would say, is start where you are and then look to sort of iterate from there.
Wonderful. And I can see from all the likes, we've got some really good engagement from our folks attending today, that you've really kind of encapsulated what is that, you know, it is starting small, creating that experience, start to then get it from good to then great, because that is taking it to that exceptional level, because it's not just about detractors, right? Detractors give us those actionable items, but it is also about maintaining and keeping that promoter. And what do we do for keeping that? So it's a circular iterative process. So such a great point, friends. I truly appreciate that. Those are the questions we have for our panelists today. I do want to make sure that we open it up to Q&A. I have not seen any in the chat just currently, but I do want to see if there's anyone to want to raise their hand, if they're brave enough to kind of share and chat if they would like to, or put it in the chat. We'll read it out too.
The only thing I would add is, you mentioned this a couple of times, Brian, is retooling and reskilling. That is 100%. We have a really robust Tech Ready program where a lot of our contact center and frontline employees come out of that and they go into a well-defined program. Some of this, you know, a lot of this AI and some of these components are low code. You know, no development. They're really, so just It's a great program. We have partners that they're the ones that help us define the workflows. They've been on the front line. So I would just echo that we have really encouraged that. And I just think that helps tell our story, that we're not, that we're trying to get you into better spots as well. So I noted that a couple times when you said it and didn't get to piggyback on it. So great ad, Brian.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think what's really great and what I'm just noticing, and I love the conversations with Brian and Robbi, is just the embracing of that unknown and then navigating it and really thinking through what are the opportunities. There's so many different angles you can look at it. And the positive is you don't have to choose one. There's the knock-on benefit. So you may be going down this journey because of NPS CSAT, but you're going to get the knock-on benefits of what can we do for the employee experience, or what can we do to drive revenue. So I think that's the best part of this piece of technology, and taking the time and effort to kind of figure it out, is all the other opportunities will open for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I hope we've really hit the nail on the head here, friends. We've got all the pieces.